what is ego, what is the cause of ego, what are the effects of having ego, and how does one go about annihilating ego. I closely read the inputs that came from some of you all. Very interesting. Now, the first question, what is ego? It can be answered from an absolute standpoint and a relative standpoint. So the question ego, what is ego, can be answered from an absolute and a relative standpoint. Now, firstly, from an absolute standpoint, what creates ego is the fact that you're born, the fact that you and I have taken a birth in itself separates us from the totality. Whether you're born as a living being, whether you're born as a human being, or for that matter, the fact that you're born, there is separation from me to the self. So from the absolute standpoint, individuality itself is ego, because you assume an independent existence. That itself, that existence of an individuality is ego, which arises out of ignorance of the self. So from an absolute point, we will all have ego until we merge back to the self, until the ego is completely liquidated, completely annihilated, where there is no more individuality. So when the individual merges and becomes one with the self, there is no more the individual, there's only the self. Exactly like there is the individuality of the river until it merges with the ocean. Once the river merges with the ocean, the river loses its individual characteristics, its trait, its quality, its svabhava, and instantly gains the characteristics of that it's merged with, which is the vast sheet of water, which is the ocean. Instantly the pure drinking water becomes that salty water. Now, whether it's right or wrong, it's immaterial. But what we are saying is it loses its individuality and gains the characteristics of the totality, which is the vast sheet of water, which is the ocean. So our individual ego, which is from an absolute point, will only end when we attain self-realization or moksha. That's a long journey. But at least we are all in the journey. How long is it? It's up to you. It's up to me. We can make it short. We can make it long. It's up to us, isn't it? But we are all in the journey. Now, so there is no abhyasa from an absolute standpoint. You must remember this. It's only a matter of information, a matter of fact. But when you look at the concept of what is ego from a relative standpoint, it becomes abhyasa. Now, in the 16th chapter of the Gita, the chapter talks about Daiva and Asura. It talks about the divine and the demoniac. So he gives a few qualities of the divine. In the 16th chapter, 3rd verse, he gives a quality known as na atimanita. Na atimanita. Atimanita means much pride. Na means not much pride. 16th chapter, the 3rd verse gives the qualities of the divine, where he says there is not much pride. Now, individuality itself is ego. Now, above that, we have created a further egoistic notion, isn't it? So even the most humblest person in this classroom is ego from an absolute standpoint. That we can't do. The fact that we are born, we are separated, we can't do much with it. But above that, all of us have got a big fat ego. And that can be dealt with the sadhana, that is the abhyasa. You get it? So the word ego, I know Maniamji has said, exit God out. What was that?
Edging God out.
Edging God out or exit God out. You know, God has got exited from our system. So there is no divine feeling at all. So edging God out, yet you're right. You know, you said that. Or you can also, there are many ways of conveying it. Ego is nothing but an exaggerated glorification of oneself. When one goes about glorifying oneself more than what is duly needed, you can say that is ego. Ego equals exaggerated glorification of oneself. And who does that? I do it myself. I glorify myself, then the more of myself than what I truly deserve. And the moment you have this ego, it has a certain expression. So the ego you have, if you examine a person who has ego, you can examine yourself, but requires little more objectivity to do self-examine. But if you examine a person who has ego, the ego expresses in few ways. The ego expresses as I am the doer attitude. There is a doership, kartrutva bhavana. So whatever he does, whatever he embarks on, he attributes a doership to himself. Bhoktrutva, an attribute of enjoyership. I am the enjoyer. I have put in efforts. These are my fruits. I only will enjoy. And I would not want to part with this joy or success with anyone. So an ownership of doership, an ownership of enjoyership. Kartrutva and bhoktrutva. And also you have, the third is a attitude of I am supreme. You have an attitude of a superiority complex over others. When you and I know that nobody is superior or inferior, everybody has a role to play in life, isn't it? All of us have some role or other to play. How can we claim ourselves superior or inferior to anyone? Again, if you do so, it is your own perception. It is your own creation. It's all in your own mind. And fourthly, an attitude of I alone exist. A subtle difference in all these four expressions: I am the doer, I am the enjoyer, I am supreme, and I alone exist. An attitude that everybody should serve you. All the time you think of your own welfare. So this, in short, is ego. You are actually defining ego. So we have defined ego from an absolute standpoint and from a relative standpoint. One is a matter of fact, other is a statement of abhyasa. Now, the second is, what is the cause of ego? Now, rest of the answers will only be answering the Vasantama. The rest of the questions will, the answers given to the rest of the three questions will answering the. Are you following?
will be Hari Om Guruji. Will be answering the effect of it, the cause.
Ama, but then what are we addressing? Sorry to be asking this question. Suddenly it might come as a jerk to all of you.
No.
But what are we answering?
Addressing how
no need to be concerned overly. What we are addressing is, we are addressing it from a relative standpoint. We are only addressing as an abhyasa. So absolute standpoint is a matter of information. You know it and put it aside and don't worry about it, because that will not go until you attain moksha. So you can't do much with it, but you can certainly diffuse the additional ego you have created out of your own
vasanas and desires. I'm sorry.
Out of one's own attitude. Like we said, the attitude as I am the doer, I am supreme, I alone exist, and I am the enjoyer. So these are all, it's not, this doesn't come from vasanas. This comes from, where do these four attitudes come from? How can you say guna again is a state of mind? Yeah,
It's attitude on.
it is our own creation, isn't it? So if I feel supreme, it's my own creation. If I claim that I am the doer, it's my own unintelligent creation of an attitude, isn't it? In reality, there is no existence of it. So you're creating an existence out of a non-existent fact. It's not that I am supreme. It's not that I am the doer. Whatever I have achieved, so many people have contributed and contributing to the happening of whatever I'm doing.
Out of ignorance, yes,
Correct. Out of ignorance, isn't it? So that can be addressed. So the rest of the three questions, which is what is the cause of ego, what are the effects of having ego, and how does one annihilate ego, all the rest of the three are abhyasa.